At some point, almost everyone reaches this moment. You've tried to change your life, not once, not casually, but seriously. You've read the books, listened to the talks, changed habits, worked on yourself. You've reflected. You've become more aware. And yet, something doesn't move, not on the surface, but underneath. Your circumstances may shift, your mindset may improve, your understanding may deepen, but you still feel like the same person inside the same invisible limits. Not miserable, just confined. It's not that life is bad, it's that nothing truly changes. You notice this especially in quiet moments, when there's no distraction, no goal to chase, no problem to solve, just you, and the feeling that you're circling something you never quite reach. You may even tell yourself, I've grown a lot. I'm not who I used to be. I'm more conscious now. And all of that might be true, but still, there's a subtle repetition, the same patterns, the same emotional loops, the same limits, wearing new clothes. This is where most people get confused. They assume the problem is effort, so they try harder, more discipline, more healing, more knowledge, more awareness. But effort doesn't touch the root. It only rearranges the surface. You can improve endlessly and never actually leave the place you're in. This realization hurts more than failure, because failure gives you something to fix. This gives you nothing to blame. You didn't quit. You didn't avoid. You didn't stay unconscious. You did the work. So why does it still feel like you're inside something you can't name? This is the exhaustion no one talks about. Not physical fatigue, not emotional burnout, but existential tiredness. The tiredness of trying to change from inside a system that quietly absorbs every attempt. The system doesn't fight your efforts. It uses them. It allows self-improvement, insight, growth, even spirituality, as long as all of it happens inside its boundaries. This is why so many people feel, I'm doing everything right, but I'm still here. Not stuck in the obvious sense, stuck in a way that feels intelligent, respectable, justifiable. If you've felt this, you're not broken, and you're not failing. But you may be trying to change your life from within the very structure that defines what change means. And until that structure is seen clearly, every attempt to escape it will quietly lead you right back inside. When people realize that nothing truly changes, their first instinct is almost always the same. They decide to become better habits, better mindset, better emotional control, better discipline, better spirituality. And again, none of this is wrong, but something crucial is misunderstood. Improvement feels like movement, and movement feels like progress. But progress is not the same as exit. You can improve endlessly without ever leaving the structure you're improving inside. A prison does not stop being a prison because you rearrange the furniture. Most people never question the structure. They only question themselves. I'm not disciplined enough. I'm not healed enough. I'm not conscious enough. I'm not aligned enough. So the system stays invisible, and the self takes all the blame. You've probably felt this, that pressure to optimize yourself, to become calmer, more grounded, less reactive, more present. And when you fail to sustain it, you assume the problem is you, not the framework, not the rules, not the invisible limits that define what better even means. Improvement gives hope. It tells you you don't need to question everything, just adjust yourself. That's comforting, because questioning the structure means stepping into uncertainty. And improvement avoids that completely. Self-improvement keeps the question alive without ever letting it be answered. The cycle looks like growth, but it behaves like containment. You improve, arrow feel progress, arrow hit, a limit, arrow blame yourself, arrow improve again. Each loop feels productive. Each loop keeps you exactly where you are. Over time, something subtle happens. You get tired. Not because the work is hard, but because the result is always temporary. Peace fades, clarity fades, motivation fades. And instead of asking why, you double down. More techniques, more practices, more effort. The system never tells you to stop. It encourages you, as long as you stay focused on fixing yourself. Because a self that is always being fixed never questions the environment that requires fixing. As long as you believe you are the problem, the structure remains safe. This is where a very uncomfortable realization begins to surface. What if nothing you're doing is meant to change your life? What if it's meant to stabilize it? Not in a cruel way, in a functional way. A system doesn't need to suppress you if it can keep you busy improving. This is why so many people feel intelligent, aware, capable, and still quietly trapped. Not trapped by force, but by participation. Until the structure itself is questioned, every form of improvement will feel like movement, without ever becoming departure. At some point, a deeper question appears. Not, why am I failing? But, why does everything I try get absorbed? Because if effort were the issue, something would eventually break open. But it doesn't. It loops. There is an invisible structure that defines what is possible before you ever make a choice. It doesn't forbid action. It frames it. It tells you what improvement looks like, what success means, what healing should produce, what change is allowed to feel like. And as long as you operate inside that frame, every attempt stays legible to the system. The system doesn't stop you from moving. It makes sure all movement stays inside. You change your beliefs. You feel lighter. You gain insight. For a moment, there's relief. But soon, the same ceiling appears. Not the same thoughts, not the same emotions, the same limit. A limit you can't explain, only sense. The system never announces itself. It doesn't say, this is as far as you go. It presents itself as common sense, reality, maturity, balance. So questioning it feels irrational, immature, dangerous. The most effective prison is the one that feels reasonable. The system doesn't recycle actions, it recycles orientation. As long as you seek results, pursue outcomes, aim for improvement, measure progress, everything stays compatible, even awakening, even insight, even rebellion. This is why some people feel they've woken up, but still live the same life internally. More aware, more articulate, more reflective, but still contained. The system doesn't need to stop awakening. It only needs to define what awakening looks like. Once it does that, even truth becomes another category, another achievement, another stage. When awakening becomes recognizable, it becomes manageable. This is why something always feels slightly off, why insight feels incomplete, why clarity never fully lands, because clarity is being processed instead of allowed. Most people think the system is external, society, culture, institutions. But the most effective version is internal. It lives in how you evaluate yourself, how you define success, how you imagine change. You don't live inside the system. The system lives inside how you think change happens. And as long as that orientation remains unquestioned, every attempt to escape will quietly return you to the same place, just with better explanations. The most effective system is not the one that blocks you, it's the one that gives you results. Because results convince you that you're moving in the right direction. You feel calmer, more centered, less reactive. Your thoughts slow down, your understanding deepens, and for a while, it really does feel different. This is where most people stop questioning, not because they're satisfied, but because they're relieved. Finally, something works. Finally, the struggle eases. Finally, there's a sense of movement. Relief is often mistaken for freedom. You notice less anxiety, more clarity, more emotional control. Life becomes manageable, and that feels like success. But slowly, quietly, the same boundaries remain, the same ceiling, the same invisible edge, not in intensity, in depth, because the system is no longer resisting you. It's cooperating. It allows improvement. It allows insight. It allows a controlled form of awakening, as long as nothing fundamental is questioned. A system that fights you creates rebels. A system that rewards you creates believers. Progress feels like exit, but it isn't. It's refinement. You're not leaving the structure. You're learning how to live comfortably inside it. This is why many people feel uneasy, even during good phases. They think, I should be happier than this. But they don't say it out loud, because everything looks fine. The discomfort has no obvious cause, so it's ignored, or spiritualized, or explained away, until the cycle begins again. What truly traps you is not what hurts, but what almost satisfies. If progress were real exit, it would not require constant maintenance. But everything you improve needs to be sustained, defended, reapplied, and anything that must be maintained is still part of the system. This is why improvement eventually feels exhausting, not because it's wrong, but because it never ends. The illusion is not that nothing changes. The illusion is that something changing means you're free. At some point, a deeper realization appears, not emotional, not dramatic, but structural. What if nothing you're experiencing is accidental? What if the limits you keep hitting are not personal failures, but features? Instead of asking, why can't I change? The question becomes, what kind of reality absorbs every attempt to change? And this is where ancient Gnostic thought becomes precise. Not symbolic, not poetic, precise. The Gnostics didn't say the world was broken, they said it was designed. They described reality as a structure that governs perception itself, not by force, not by punishment, but by orientation. You are allowed to act, you are allowed to improve, you are allowed to awaken, as long as all of it happens inside predefined boundaries. The Gnostics called the intelligence behind this structure the Demiurge, not as a monster, not as a villain, but as a governing principle, a principle that organizes reality in a way that keeps consciousness busy, but never free. The Demiurge does not suppress awakening, he manages it. This explains something most people feel but can't articulate. Why? Insight doesn't liberate awareness, doesn't resolve understanding, doesn't end the cycle. Because the system does not oppose awareness, it integrates it. Most people imagine control as restriction. The Gnostics saw control as permission. You are permitted to heal, grow, understand, even transcend, as long as transcendence remains an experience inside the same perceptual field. A system that allows awakening doesn't need to fear it. This is why liberation always feels close, because it is simulated. Enough clarity to keep you searching, enough relief to keep you engaged, enough insight to keep you invested, but never enough rupture to step outside the frame. You've probably felt this, that sense that truth is everywhere, yet nowhere final. That awakening keeps pointing forward, but never arrives. Not because you're doing it wrong, but because arrival would end participation. From a Gnostic perspective, the system exists to reproduce itself, not biologically, perceptually. As long as consciousness remains oriented toward outcomes progress improvement, meaning it stays engaged. Meaning is not liberation. Meaning is glue. This is not pessimism, it's diagnosis. The Gnostics were not trying to scare anyone. They were trying to explain why even sincere seekers remain inside. Once this is seen, the question is no longer, how do I change my life? But what would it mean to stop participating in the system that defines change itself? Here is where almost everyone makes the same mistake, even after recognizing the system, even after understanding how it works, even after seeing the illusion. They try to use that understanding. Once the system is seen, the seeker immediately asks, how do I get out? That question feels logical, but it carries the same orientation that kept them trapped before. Trying to escape the system is still participation. You may notice this in yourself. After insight, the mind begins to strategize. How do I apply this? How do I live from this? How do I stay outside the illusion? And without realizing it, the system has been reactivated because it feels intelligent, responsible, even advanced. But the orientation hasn't changed, only the content. Before, you tried to improve yourself. Now, you try to liberate yourself. Different goal, same movement. The system doesn't care what you seek. It only cares that you keep seeking. The Gnostics were very clear here. Liberation does not happen through opposition. You don't fight the system. You don't escape it. You don't dismantle it. You stop feeding it. This is deeply uncomfortable because it removes agency. No heroic exit, no final breakthrough, no moment of triumph, just the end of movement. The system lives in orientation toward future outcome resolution, arrival. As long as consciousness leans forward, the loop remains active. The prison is not a place, it's a direction. This is why stillness feels threatening, because stillness has no objective, no progress, no proof, and the system cannot operate without direction. Notice what happens when you stop trying to fix anything, even for a moment. There's discomfort, restlessness, an urge to do something. That urge is the system asking to be fed. The moment you stop moving toward freedom, something loosens. Not dramatically, quietly. The mistake is not ignorance. It's effort applied in the wrong direction, trying to exit what can only dissolve when it is no longer pursued. Understanding does not free you, and trying to use understanding binds you again. What remains is neither action nor inaction, but something far more unsettling. When the movement finally stops, nothing extraordinary happens. No vision, no revelation, no sense of arrival. That's what most people expect, and that expectation is precisely what never allows it to happen. What remains is not freedom as an experience. What remains is absence of pressure, no need to improve, no need to escape, no need to understand further, just awareness without direction. Liberation does not feel like victory. It feels like nothing needing to continue. This is why it's often missed, because it offers no identity, no story, no confirmation, nothing you can tell yourself later to prove it happened. The Gnostics did not describe awakening as something added to the self. They described it as the collapse of misorientation, not gaining truth, but losing the need to seek it. What ends is not the world. What ends is the agreement to keep participating in it the same way. Life continues. Thoughts still arise. Emotions still move. Circumstances still shift. But they are no longer referenced, no longer measured, no longer used as proof. Nothing needs to stabilize. Nothing needs to resolve. Nothing needs to arrive. And because of that, something finally relaxes. The system survives on movement. When movement ends, there's nothing left for it to manage. If this felt unsettling, let it. Not everything true feels reassuring. Some truths feel like space, and space needs no explanation. This is the Inner Gnosis Archive.